Esapekka Lappi was one of the brightest prospects in WRC for half a decade. After winning his first WRC rally in his first season, people thought that even the sky isn't gonna be the limit for this young man. But a lot of things unraveled in the next 3 years, and in the end, Esapekka was left without a seat.
But why?
Esapekka Lappi followed his brother's footsteps and started karting when he was 7 years old, with a dream of becoming an F1 world champion. He had some very solid results in karting and even competed in the European Championship level, but funding problems forced him to switch sports when he was 16 years old. A switch to rally driving came in 2008 when he was driving a Honda Civic Type R in the Finnish Rally Championship. These first years, he was mostly trying to understand pace notes and how to ride them. And in 2010, he switched co-drivers and started working with Janne Firm, who he's still together with. They were showing great pace in their class, finishing in the top 3 most of the time, and really started to improve their pace notes. Their first WRC start came in 2011, when they entered the WRC Rally Finland with Citroen C2 R2 and won their class by 40 seconds in dominating fashion, winning 11 out of the 22 stages. And it wasn't like they didn't have any real competitors. They were 3.5 minutes ahead of the JWRC winner Egon Gaur, who beat Craig Breen for the JWRC win. And keep in mind, back then the juniors stopped driving 4 stages before the end because people thought that those small cars couldn't survive whole WRC rallies.
What?
So you can imagine that the gap would have been even bigger between Lappi and Gaur if the juniors continued to the end. 2012 is the year you can say that EP and Janne started to seriously level up. At the beginning of the season, EP was signed by Evan Management and started driving with the Ford Fiesta S2000 car. They won every rally in the Finnish Championship and took the title with relative ease. But the rally where they really made a name for themselves was the WRC Rally Finland, where they were battling with Sébastien Ogier, who, if you don't remember, was in a Skoda Fabia S2000 that year, because he had a little falling out with Citroen management and the GOAT Mr. Sébastien Loeb in 2011. VW was still building the WRC car to enter the sport in 2013, which meant that Ogier had to drive the Skoda Fabia S2000 for a year to keep his memory of the stages as fresh as possible. The battle between Esapekka and Ogier lasted for 9 stages, because Esapekka crashed on the second day. But his stage times were very impressive compared to Ogier, and because of that, he was picked up by Skoda Motorsport for the 2013 season to compete mainly in European Rally Championship and Asian Pacific Rally Championship. It started out pretty well with Skoda. They grabbed their first WRC victory for the team at Portugal, which was their second WRC outing with them. But the first 3 years with Skoda were quite bumpy, with him showing great pace and grabbing wins, but also having the habit of changing the shape of his car by driving into trees, cement poles, curbs or curbs and trees. This is actually quite normal for a driver that is learning and gaining experience on foreign roads. They won the European Rally Championship with Skoda in 2014, so you could say experience well gathered. In 2015, Skoda Motorsport concentrated on the WRC2 Championship, which is crucial when you're trying to get a WRC car seat. In his first year, he finished 3rd because of 3 little mistakes. In Sardinia, he broke his steering, they managed to get it fixed on the stage, but lost 31 minutes in total and finished the rally in 9th, 26.5 minutes behind the winner. In Germany, he crashed on the second stage into the trees again, but going into the last round in Catalonia, they still had a very good chance to claim the title. They needed 10 points more than Nasser Al-Attiyah, which meant that if Esapekka won and Nasser was 3rd, then the title would go to Finland. Everything was going okay, and Esapekka was 2nd in the standings on SS10, with only his teammate Tiedemann ahead of him. So theoretically, Esapekka was leading because Tiedemann would let Esapekka pass if necessary for the championship. Because Tiedemann had nothing to lose, he had no chance of grabbing the title at this point. But Esapekka crashed on the 11th stage and left their title hopes to rest in a ditch in Spain. They continued on Sunday, but crashed again. You could say that this was all necessary to clinch the title in 2016. He minimized his mistakes and only had 1 retirement for the whole year, which came in Sardinia. He won 4 rallies out of the 6 that were taken into account and won the championship by 10 points ahead of Teemu Suninen and Elvin Evans. Looking back, you could say that 2016 was one of the most competitive seasons that WRC2 has ever had. For the 2017 season, he was signed by Toyota Gazoo Racing for 8 rallies. Toyota was returning to the WRC for the first time in 18 years, and with the team being based in Finland, you guessed it, all the drivers selected for the first season were Finnish. Latvala and Hänninen getting full seasons in the car, with Lappi joining them in 8 rallies. His first year in a WRC car was quite amazing. He won his first rally in Finland, which is one of the most difficult rallies to win, even if you're Finnish, and picked up 16 stage wins throughout the year. The funny thing is that win in Finland was his only podium that year. In 2018, he started to find more consistency and finished the season 5th, with 3 podiums and 18 stage wins. At the end of the year, Esapekka was a hot commodity, and every team had interest in him. But it was Citroen who grabbed the young Finn's talents for 2019 and teamed him up with then 6-time world champion Sébastien Ogier. On paper, this Citroen team seemed like the one to beat, but as many of you already know, it was a disaster. Both of the drivers complained that the car is undrivable and really struggled to find the pace against the Hyundais and Toyotas. At first glance, the 2019 season doesn't look that bad. He grabbed 3 second places compared to last year's 3 third places, but he also had 6 retirements in 2019 compared to 3 the previous year. And he had 43 less points and 11 fewer stage wins in 2019. His life in Citroen was short, because Mr. Ogier decided to leave Citroen for Toyota at the end of the season, and because of this, Citroen left the WRC. What the f***? Which meant that Esapekka was also looking for a seat. Because his contract with Citroen was signed for 2 years, and Esapekka still had a year in his contract, he was signed by M Sport for the 2020 season, with Citroen paying the salary to Esapekka. His year with M Sport was ruined mainly by the coronavirus. Funding problems meant that there was no pre-event test for many of the rallies, and also development of the car was halted. He finished the season with 2 stage wins and 6th overall, but the season was full of performance issues. Stage and interviews left the feeling that Esapekka didn't want to be in the car anymore, because he couldn't understand why the times were so bad. This is probably the most demoralizing thing for a driver, when you think that you have driven well, but when you look at the times, you're miles behind. And it wasn't like he was miles behind other teams. Many of the times, he was a second per kilometer slower than his teammate who had the same car. But we have to keep in mind that going to a rally with 0 testing is extremely difficult. Toyota and Hyundai were testing as much as the regulations allowed them, and Hyundai competed in smaller local rallies or had rallies basically organized for them to use as a testing ground, while Esapekka and other M Sport drivers had to find the right setup for the rally on the shakedown, for crying out loud. Esapekka was left without a seat for the 2021 season, with M Sport announcing that Gus Greensmith will get a full year with them and Teemu Suninen and Adrian Formeau sharing the second car. This is a logical move by M Sport, because all of these 3 drivers are bringing some sort of money into the team. But Esapekka hasn't given up on his dream of becoming a world champion. He entered the Arctic Rally Finland in 2021 with a VW Polo R5 and drove in the WRC2 class, where there was also a certain Andreas Mikkelsen, who promised at the beginning of the year to win every WRC2 rally with dominating fashion. Well, Esapekka had different ideas and basically shat on Andreas during the whole rally. Mikkelsen was faster than Esapekka on only 1 stage and finished second, 48 seconds behind Lappi. It's extremely difficult to get a WRC seat, and even more difficult to protect that seat. If you ask me, I would say that Esapekka deserves a seat in M Sport more than the other 3 drivers. But looking at the situation right now, maybe it was all for the better that he got kicked by M Sport, because M Sport is still struggling with pace, and Esapekka impressed everybody with his speed in an R5 car. Maybe it's better to be first in an R5 rather than 6th or 7th in a WRC car. Looking back, I think we can all agree that Esapekka should have never left Toyota for Citroen, but maybe this was all a lesson that he needed to learn, and he'll come back to the WRC more focused, more hungry, maybe a little more angry, and definitely more mature.